If you look at this coral and think to yourself, isn't this an Acanthastrea? You would not be alone. Until recently, this was an Acanthastrea lordhowensis, sharing this genus with other corals such as Acanthastrea echinata. It has since been reclassified as a Micromussa in 2016. Name change aside, these are still some of my favorite large polyp stony corals. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet, so they say. In this video, we'll cover some care tips as far as placement, lighting, feeding, all that good stuff. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another coral spotlight here at Tidal Gardens. As the title suggests, this one is all about Micromussa. Micromussa are one of the most popular large polyp stony corals ever since some amazing specimens started showing up from Australia about a decade ago. Originally, a baseball-sized colony in a basic color like red or green would fetch over $1,000 on eBay. The coral collector market instantly gravitated to these corals. Over the years, though, prices have come down greatly, and there are now a much greater variety of colors. Back then, most of them were red or green, but now there are rainbow variants available to hobbyists. There are two species of Micromussa that are commonly seen in the hobby. There is the lordhowensis, formerly an acan, and then there is the Micromussa species that I guess always was a Micromussa. Micromussa Micromussa is typically a smaller polyp than a lordhowensis, and they have slightly different patterns. Oftentimes you get these UFO rings on a Micromussa that are really not very common on lords. I did a video on Micromussa Micromussa way back in 2012, and even titled that video a mini-me acan, at the time anyways. I guess that's a little ahead of the curve on that one because that comparison was a lot more spot on come 2016. But instead of the Micromussa becoming an acan, the lordhowensis became a Micromussa. It makes sense that the two corals were eventually grouped together in the Micromussa genus because they appeared to have a lot more in common with one another than an Acanthastrea echinata or a bowerbanki that typically have like a more flat appearance. Speaking of Acanthastrea bowerbanki, I think they've left the acan train themselves, and they're now homophilia, along with what used to be a scolemia. Yeah, there's a lot of corals shuffling around like this. It's kind of like the NBA trade deadline or something. Thank you so much, taxonomy nerds. Now I have to change all these coral listings on my website. Before we get into the care tips, here's a quick PSA. If you like these coral spotlights, you can join the community by subscribing to this channel and hitting the notification bell. YouTube changed their algorithm, so subscribing by itself doesn't exactly guarantee new videos will show up in your feed. We have many more videos like this planned, so be sure to hit the notification bell to stay up to date on all of our new uploads. Okay, without further ado, let's talk about Micromussa care tips. Now that we've covered some of the background info on Micromussa and a whirlwind tour of coral renamings, rest assured that none of it really translates to a change in husbandry for these corals. So let's go over some of those in detail now. Micromussa do not require very much light. In fact, I'm willing to bet that people tend to struggle a bit with these corals because they're providing too much light. We recommend low to medium light, something in the range of 25 to 50 par. I've seen them in many different types of aquariums under many types of light, and the ones in the dimmest seem to be the happiest. The other thing to mention lighting-wise with Micromussa is that they're going to change color dramatically depending on the spectrum of lighting provided. It may require significant trial and error with different light profiles to achieve a particular color that you're looking for. It may sound counterintuitive, but I've had the best color expression in my systems here with very old T5 fluorescents, some of which are over a year old. As for flow and placement, there's a couple of things that I look for. Micromussa do not require a ton of flow, so I look to provide just enough so detritus does not settle on them. Most of the time, hobbyists place micros towards the bottom of the tank, so it's important that they get enough flow to keep them clean. On the other hand, I think feeding is important, so for long-term health, preferably the flow can be slowed during feeding time to allow the coral to grab pieces out of the water column. When I observe Micromussa, whether it's a lordhowensis or an amacussensis, I'm looking to see very fat, inflated polyps with tentacles constantly extended. They grow much faster and add additional buds when they look like this. When Micromussa come from the wild, they almost always look small and tightly drawn in. I can tell which colonies have been in captivity long term and were well taken care of based on that polyp behavior. Part of that is lighting and flow, but in my experience, it's really more about feeding regularly. We feed a mixture of frozen shrimp here. Our blend is pretty basic, mainly it's mysis shrimp and krill with a little bit of rotifers. You can also feed a high quality dry coral pellet food, but be careful not to overfeed dry food of any kind, because it's possible to burn the coral if too much is fed all at once. One particular brand I know recommends something like a single pellet per coral, so if you do decide to go down that route, less is more. Moving on to water chemistry. It's important to note that Micromussa is a potentially fast-growing LPS. As with any stony coral, micros make use of calcium, carbonate, and magnesium to build up their skeletons. The fact that they're faster growing means that they can tax these water parameters more than a similar looking but slower growing LPS such as Favia. If you decide to ramp up feeding, it's a good idea to also test for phosphates and nitrates, which are my basic pollution metrics. Micromussa can tolerate slightly elevated nitrates. In fact, they might even like it, but once they reach levels approaching 30 to 50 parts per million, things can go downhill really fast and cause tissue recession. Similarly, corals do need a little bit of phosphate in the water, but elevated levels can cause algae blooms, which can have a negative effect on all of your corals. So what kind of tank is Micromussa for? Normally, I would say a mixed reef, but I really think that these corals would do a lot better in a tank that is dimly lit, which would make it less suitable for light-living corals such as Acropora and Montipora. I'd say that this coral would fare best in an LPS-dominated tank with similar low-light corals like Blastomussa, and possibly even non-photosynthetic corals that appreciate regular feedings and slightly elevated nutrient levels. I don't know, what do you guys think? That does it for this coral spotlight on Micromussa, aka the artist formerly known as Acanthastrea. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to see more on these corals, or perhaps purchase one of them for your reef tank, please visit us at tidalgardens.com. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and until next time, happy reefing.